So Adrian's a part-time primary school teacher, the education policy co-lead at the Mindfulness Initiative and founder of Teachappy. In 2012, he was awarded a Happy Hero Medal by Lord Richard Layard at the House of Lords for his work on developing wellbeing in schools. Adrian is now going to lead a session for us on how to be a happier teacher. Thank you, Adrian. Over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rachel. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so yeah, my session is called How to Be a Happier Teacher, and it's taking some kind of research and ideas from my new book, which came out this week, called Teacher Wellbeing and Self-Care, which I co-wrote with Dr. Emma Kell, who's a secondary teacher. Essentially, what we're going to be covering is why your well-being is important. If that wasn't obvious enough, I'm just going to make it really clear. And then we're going to just cover some key aspects from the book, which I think are really important to developing our happiness and well-being. So perspective, attention, positive emotions, gratitude, agency, and hopefully we'll have time to end with some laughter. So one of the first things to say, why is teacher well-being important? It's because, you know, most of today, your kind of conference has been about, you know, developing well-being of pupils. And pretty much the most important way that we can teach children good well-being is to model it. There's a quote I love by a developmental psychologist called Professor Alison Gopnik, and she says that children learn far more from their caregivers' unconscious behaviors than any of their conscious manipulations. So we can talk a good talk about the things that support well-being. We can talk about the 5 ways to well-being in our schools, but if our students see us not leading what we're preaching about, then it's not going to land how we want it to land. So any talk, any ideas that you've taken away today about focusing on pupil well-being, you have to start applying it to your own life first in order to lead by example. The second reason teacher well-being is important is because we typically do our jobs better the healthier and happier we are. This report from 2014 called Healthy Teachers Higher Marks, establishing a link between teacher health and well-being and student outcomes, basically showed that there was a statistically significant correlation. So it's very hard to prove causation that because of this happened, but a statistically significant correlation between how healthy and happy teachers were reporting and the grades their students were getting. So it appeared that there was, you know, good evidence that showed that teachers would seem to be teaching more effectively, which was enabling their students to do better in class. And obviously it will be bi-directional as well, that as our students do better and they're making progress, that makes us feel better as well. We have increased levels of job satisfaction, we show increased levels of well-being. So it is kind of 2-directional, but there is also research just from across multiple industries that show that when employees are happier, and this is backed up by causal data as well, particularly from the University of Oxford, show that when employees are happier, they're more productive at work, they're more creative, they have less time off sick. Their companies that report having higher levels of job satisfaction among employees tend to be more profitable and more successful as well. So there's no reason why teachers should be any different. That when we are healthier and happier, we tend to teach better. We tend to be more responsive in the classrooms. We tend to handle challenges and difficult situations in schools far more easily when we are healthy and happy. But also, you know, sometimes we fall into the trap as teachers as focusing too much on children. It's often why we got into the job, but we often neglect and forget about ourselves. So yes, when you know, our well-being is important because it's important to model good well-being to children. Our well-being is important because we tend to do our jobs better, which will help children. But ultimately, our well-being is important in and of itself for us. This quote from Aristotle, that happiness is the meaning of life, the whole aim and end of human existence. You know, ultimately, we deserve to lead lives that we find enriching, enjoyable, and fulfilling. And this is why our well-being matters. So let's look at some of the things that affect our well-being. Perspective is fundamental to our well-being. And the reason is, you know, psychologists have shown that often how we view a situation is as if not more important than the situation itself. And that's because, you know, two people can experience the same adversity. One person can take it in their stride and kind of bounce back from that difficulty, and the other person can be completely knocked over by it. And often, not always, but often it's about how people interpret and view and perceive that negative situation, which allows them to kind of manage it more successfully. So our perspective is really important. Perspective is also about kind of seeing the bigger picture. It's about taking a step back and understanding kind of what's going on. And so I just wanted, because although we're going to be talking about kind of positive emotions kind of shortly, I also wanted to acknowledge that, you know, right now our perspective should fully acknowledge that we are in a global pandemic, that none of us have ever experienced a situation like this. None of us have ever taught in such a pressurized situation as we're experiencing now. And so if we are feeling, and I've put dodgy here as a kind of umbrella catch-all, if we're feeling more anxious than normal, if we're feeling more worried or more flat or, you know, lower on motivation, whatever it is, you know, that is perfectly okay. That is perfectly normal given everything, the context of what's going on. So perspective is about not losing sight of what is happening, what the backdrop is to our teaching right now. And I think there's a tendency and an inclination in schools, because they're normally such busy, frantic places, that we can actually forget that we're teaching in a pandemic. And we can try and do and achieve all the things that we normally do and achieve in a typical school year. And that is simply not going to happen. Or it's not going to happen without some collateral damage, which might be teachers burning out along the way. So one of the things that's really important with, you know, managing difficult feelings and emotions, the first thing is to acknowledge them, like recognize that you are feeling in a way that is maybe uncomfortable. So acknowledge your feelings is the first thing. The second thing is to express them. So don't bottle them up. If you're feeling in any way kind of, I'm just going to use the word dodgy, then talk to someone about it or journal. Like, it's really important that we don't bottle these feelings up. So expression of how we're feeling can be through journaling. So you can have treat yourself to a kind of little journal and just write down how you're feeling at the end of every day. It's something that I definitely did when I went through a period of acute anxiety and a bout of depression. I found journaling really helpful, just getting my feelings and thoughts out on paper. And it actually kind of helped me make more sense of what was going on in my head. The other thing is speaking to people that we trust. It could be colleagues, it could be friends, it could be family, but just sharing and offloading. The other thing is in education, making use of free services like education support that have a 24/7, 365 days a week helpline with trained counsellors at the end of a phone. And it's free for anybody working in education in the UK. And I've done kind of work for education support over the years. And one thing they always say with their helpline is they really wish people would get in touch whilst they're feeling dodgy rather than when they're at crisis point. Because it's much more easy for the counsellors to help people and signpost them to other support services that can help them when people are kind of on that road to kind of feeling worse, to when they have hit rock bottom. It's much harder to help people when you're at rock bottom. And yeah, the last thing in terms of feeling kind of difficult feelings and emotions, so acknowledge them, express them, and then kind of as part of all of this is accept them. Like, just accept that these are your feelings right now. Try not to kind of suppress them or push them away or get rid of them or wish you were feeling differently. This is the kind of global context right now. This is the local context. This is how I'm feeling. It's perfectly kind of normal and okay to feel like this. And feelings come and go, as we all know. But sometimes when we're kind of stuck right in the middle of kind of difficult feelings, it can feel like they're always going to last and be around forever. But this too shall pass is a useful expression to tell ourselves. But I just wanted to kind of acknowledge that although this is about being a happier teacher, part of being a happier teacher is also learning how to handle difficult times and feelings and emotions in a skillful way. So how does attention relate to well-being, teacher well-being? And it also relates to perspective. I would highly recommend, if you haven't read this book already, Happiness by Design by Professor Paul Dolan. In that book, he says your happiness depends on what you pay attention to. And that expression has just stuck with me from reading that book. Your happiness depends on what you pay attention to. And in the book, he says that, you know, it's as much about withdrawing your attention from the things that deplete you and bring you down as it is about paying attention to things that nourish and give you energy. So something else to kind of talk about right now is we do need to be really mindful about what we pay attention to. So at the moment, the news is full of stories about, you know, second wave and about increasing death rates and, you know, COVID avalanche. It's completely and utterly depressing and overwhelming if you spend too long reading all the different articles. And this is the thing about attention. If you pay attention to depressing stories, to nerve-wracking stories, to scary stories, you will eventually feel scared, nervous, and depressed, because that's essentially what your mind does. It's focusing on the things that you are absorbing. So we need to be really mindful about what we pay attention to. This isn't about ignoring what's happening around us and, you know, in the news, but it is about being a very careful and mindful consumer of the news. So I still check the news daily, but I'm very mindful about how I am feeling whilst I'm reading these news stories. I'm also kind of keen to seek out more hopeful and optimistic voices amongst this kind of COVID backdrop. So I have an app on my phone which is called the Zoe C19 app. Professor Tim Spector set it up. And if you just YouTube and search for Tim Spector, and he gives these little weekly updates, he just seems a lot more grounded, balanced, and measured about what is happening in England at the moment and the UK. And I find just watching his take on things just a bit more reassuring, which I think can help, because otherwise some people, I fear, are kind of just scaremongering, not because what is happening is not real or, you know, or accurate, but the fact is we're in a situation that we haven't been in before. So a lot of it is projecting, it's conjecture, it's estimating. So yeah, be mindful about what you pay attention to at the moment. Also on social media, because we have a negativity bias, which I will be talking about later, our minds are naturally drawn to negative news stories. It's partly because of a survival instinct in us. We are always on the lookout for threats and dangers so that we can spot them early and then avoid them. So we need to know the bad stuff that's around us so that we can, you know, take evasive action. On social media, it also means we can get drawn into posts that are just negative about teaching, negative about what's happening in the world right now. So be aware of miserable posts, and I purposefully have left this image off the screen. It just comes with a trigger warning. I'm about to show a very miserable post. There it is in all its glory. Just be aware of the things, if you're on the social media, be it Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, whatever, again, just tune into how you are feeling. Just notice if, you know, if you're watching stuff that's making you laugh and making you joyful, fine. That will be good for you. And we'll come on to why positive emotions can be so helpful in difficult times. But if it's getting you down, if you're feeling kind of deflated and low, just take a step back. Just have a bit of a detox and then, you know, invest your energy elsewhere. And this is the flip side about attention. So as well as being mindful and withdrawing our attention from the things that are depleting us and getting us down, we also need to pay attention to the things that nourish us, the things that make us feel good, the things that give us energy, that give us hope and optimism. So this is an image. It's my two sons, Rafe, who's 2.5 on the right, Eli, my 5-year-old in the middle, and then their cousin Erin on the left. This was not that long ago. It's only a few weeks ago, down in Poole in Dorset. We went to go and visit family. This is before the rule of 6. And yeah, it was just a lovely time. And when I think back to that time, and I also pay attention to my 2 boys and just the joy on their faces of running into the sea, of building sandcastles, all of that stuff, it just completely grounds me. It gives me hope for the future. It gives me a sense of encouragement. So whatever works for you, pay attention to the things that give you energy. You know, pick up the phone to the people that make you laugh. Have a socially distanced walk with someone that gives you energy. Pay attention to the things that nourish you, because that massively affects your happiness and your well-being. Your happiness depends on what you pay attention to. So just keep that in mind. Linked to this, so I mentioned our negativity bias. An expert called Dr. Rick Hanson, who's written a brilliant book called Hardwiring Happiness, says that our brains are like Velcro for the negative and Teflon for the positive. And what studies show is that, you know, we recognize negative stimuli far more quickly than positive stimuli. We recognize angry faces more quickly than happy, smiling faces. And it's because our brains have been wired over millennia to be on the lookout for dangers and threats. Because our ancestors that could spot those dangers quickly and avoid them survived, and they passed on their genes to us. But Rick Hanson, his research, and essentially the research of positive psychology, shows that we can rewire our brain's negativity bias. And one of the ways we can do this is by something called taking in the good. And essentially this is about paying attention to the small good things that are happening all around us. An activity called 3 Good Things can be really good to do here. What a study in America showed was that when participants in this study, just for 1 week, were asked at the end of every day to write down 3 good things that have gone well for them, they found that over the period of 6 months, they showed gradual but significant improvements in their well-being. And the researchers couldn't understand why such a short intervention, a 1 week intervention, had such a long impact over 6 months. And what they found when they followed up with the participants was that many had enjoyed doing the 3 good things activity, that they'd carried on doing it after the study had finished. And the researchers found that those people that had carried on doing the 3 good things the longest showed the biggest improvements in their well-being. And so this is what rewiring the negativity bias means. It means continually, regularly focusing on the small, positive, good things that are happening to us and around us. And eventually, Rick Hanson says, we start to level the playing field. So this isn't about making stuff up. It's not about ignoring the difficult and hard aspects of our lives. It's literally about seeing life more realistically, because we have this bias towards the negative. By taking in the good, we actually have a more realistic perspective on life, because it's not all bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come out of my presentation and I'm going to encourage you to just share a good thing that has happened to you today. So thinking from the moment that you woke up until now, what one small good thing has happened for you. So just enter something in the chat box. And just to give an example from my own situation, you know, this morning, both my boys, 2.5-year-old going back to preschool, Eli going back to reception, they were both really excited about seeing their friends getting back to school. So my day started on a positive note. So what small things have gone well for you today? So Bianca saying being able to take my children to school. Laura, my bath was fixed. Rachel, my coffee was free today. Keely, having a tasty McDonald's breakfast. Layla was kindly made a cup of tea this morning. The sun's been shining, taking my dog for a walk. My mum's birthday present got delivered just in time. Petra's just seen a rainbow. Took my little one to preschool. Saw my husband at lunchtime. Breakfast and lunch with hubby at home. Lovely. My husband made me a cup of tea in bed. Heard many insights about positive well-being from so many people. Printers working at school. Husband made me lunch. Mid-presentation this morning, one of my cats jumped on the table for a cuddle. and having my lunch made for me. Lovely. Thank you so much for sharing them. And this is the thing, like these, pretty much all of those things you shared, you do not need to be wealthy to appreciate and enjoy those things. So being made a cuppa in bed, having your lunch being made for you, an extra half hour in bed, these are small things that do actually happen all day, every day. Maybe not all day, every day, but they happen every day. But we typically don't dwell on them. And this is what Rick Hansen says. We need, taking in the good is about dwelling on these experiences, because our brains are wired in such a way that we are designed to focus on the things that haven't gone well. So all of these small things that you've just shared that have gone well for you, if, let's say, at the end of a day, let's say it was a normal teaching day, a parent had been kind of aggressive towards you or complained about something that you'd done, for the rest of that day, you would typically dwell on that one small exchange at the end, even though your day might have been littered with loads of small positive things, successes, because that's the way our brains are wired. So this is what taking in the good is. It's literally about taking the time to stop and reflect over your day and just write down 3 small things that have gone well for you. So what I would advise, if you haven't kind of done this already, I know when I do this trainings, 2 or 3 people will often say, oh, I do this and it's great, and I share my good things with my husband and my partner. Treat yourself to a little moleskin journal. Have a pen ready, so that on your bedside table, and just try it for a week if you don't do this already. At the end of every day, before you go to bed, just sit on the end of your bed and just think back over your day and just write down 3 small things that have gone well for you and why. And just try it for a week. If you have a partner at home, you can even just, share your 3 good things with your partner. This is something my wife and I do. I write in my journal. My partner doesn't, my wife doesn't do it, but we then just talk and she verbally shares 3 small things. And it's just a really nice way, even on a really kind of difficult, challenging day. It's just a lovely way to end your day, so you can kind of go to sleep knowing that actually there is good things happening, that good things will happen tomorrow. And the studies show the more positive things we notice today, the more likely it is we'll notice the small good things the next day. So give that a go. So let me go back into presentation mode. Okay. So another reason, when we do the 3 good things activity, essentially what we are doing is experiencing positive emotions. Now, positive emotions, there's a whole spectrum. It's not just about happiness and joy, peace, serenity. So that sense of calm can be a positive emotion. Curiosity, interest can be a positive emotion. Love is a positive emotion. Amusement, so laughing at things, is a positive emotion. A sense of awe, so if you've ever been walking out in nature and you've just seen a beautiful, like one of you mentioned, a beautiful rainbow, you can have a sense of awe. So there's a real spectrum of positive emotions. What the research shows is that, this is a quote on the screen from Sean Aker. He's written a brilliant book called The Happiness Advantage. He says the positive brain has a biological advantage over the negative or neutral brain. What studies show is that when we are in a positive state of mind, we tend to be more flexible with our thinking. That flexibility in thought makes us more resilient because we actually become better at problem solving. And we also tend to be more creative. So this is why he says the positive brain has this biological advantage, because our brains work more effectively when in a positive state of mind. And like I said, this doesn't have to be like, I'm super happy right now. It could just be you're calm. It could just be that you're curious about something, or you've just been out to walk your dog and you've just seen a beautiful kind of rainbow. These things that nudge us into a more optimistic, hopeful, positive state of mind, that's where this creativity, flexibility and thought comes in. Professor Barbara Fredrickson, who's an expert in positive emotions, she's been studying them for over 30 years. She says that they change our brain and they build your reserves and your resilience. Barbara Fredrickson developed this broaden and build theory. And the broaden and build theory is that positive emotions, they broaden our perspective. So this is how it links to perspective. When we're in a negative frame of mind, our perspective typically narrows onto the threat. So there's something, you know, the parent is having a go at something that we've done in class, and, you know, we fully focus on this threat. And so everything else shuts down. When we're in a more positive frame of mind, our perspective broadens. We start to see more options open to us. We start to take in more information. This is why our problem solving skills increase, because we suddenly see, oh, actually, I could do this, or I could respond this way. And the build part of the theory is that we typically build our social capital. So we build stronger relationships with other people when we're in a positive state of mind. Because just think about that negative interaction with the parent. If we're in this kind of fight flight mode, we will typically become very defensive. We might start to accuse them of things as well. It does not build that relationship. If we're in, let's say, a calm state of mind when this parent is offloading, and we err towards maybe compassion rather than defensiveness, suddenly that parent gets to, you know, offload something, and then you respond in a kind of calm, compassionate way. It changes their response to you in exchange. And so you're more likely to build a stronger relationship with that parent. They might then, after a bit of reflection, apologize and say, look, I'm really sorry. I just, you know, raised my voice, but, you know, I had to put my dog down earlier, or whatever. Suddenly they've opened up that something else has kind of been bothering them, and they've just used you as a bit of an outlet. But either way, when we're in a positive state of mind, we broaden our horizons and we build our relationships with other people. We become more forgiving, and we become better. We become more pro-social, kinder, more generous and helpful towards others. So positive emotions can be really important. And this is why things like taking in the good can be really beneficial towards us. Perspective also relates to us, you know, stepping back, seeing the bigger picture and asking ourselves in this moment, what really matters. And I actually think that this pandemic in some ways can be really beneficial towards us and our well-being, because it's given us a chance to pause. It's given us that needed time to kind of step back, and essentially we are in a life and death situation. This is what, you know, a global virus going around, over 1 million people have died globally. It makes you think, okay, wow, like life is precious. We have no idea what's going to happen. You know, literally a year ago, we had no idea that a global pandemic was just, you know, a few months away on the horizon. And look how everything's changed in a matter of, you know, a few weeks and months. And so in the new book, Emma and I write about mortality. And so this next kind of slide just comes with a bit of a trigger warning. But it is, you know, talking about mortality can help us appreciate life and the precious moments we have in front of us. And so we cite research or ideas from a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, written by a palliative care nurse called Bronnie Ware. And in that book, she talks about her time as a care nurse, and how, you know, she would nurse people in their last few days and weeks of their lives. And they would often open up to her about the things they were proud of, their achievements, but they would typically share their regrets, the things that they wish they'd done differently if they had their time over again. And so what Bronnie Ware did in writing her book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, she wanted to share the wisdom of people that were at the end of their lives and share that with people that were in the middle or the beginning of theirs, so that we could live our lives to the fullest and not make the same mistakes and have the same regrets that these people, her patients, were having. So these were the top 5 regrets. 1, many of them wished they'd had the courage to lead a life true to themselves. So this was about being aware of, you know, their sense of purpose and their values, and making choices and decisions that were aligned with those, not aligned with the values and wishes of other people so much, but what really was important to them. Bit of a cliche, but many of them said, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. And as teachers, I really think we need to reflect on this. Many of us are prone to overwork, and I've definitely been guilty of this in the past. You know, we do not get to our deathbeds and wish we'd spent more time in the classroom or more time in the office. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. So many of Bronnie Ware's patients had said they denied expressing themselves in order to not make other people unhappy or to please other people. But on reflection, in not expressing themselves, they were denying themselves. They weren't being true to their feelings and their emotions. Many said, I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. And as a parent of 2 young boys, I can certainly relate to this. You know, life gets busy. You know, you've got a young family and you've always kind of, you know, going to the zoo or doing this and that. And I have lost touch with some of my good friends from school and university. And actually, I've reconnected with them kind of during lockdown. And we've got Facebook groups and, WhatsApp groups and things like that. And I've actually met up with them more because of this situation. And I've highlighted this in yellow. What I would like you to do, we'll come back to that in a minute. The fifth point was, I wish I had let myself be happier. And many had got to the end of their lives and realized that happiness was a choice, and that it was a choice about choosing to stay in touch with their friends. It was a choice about choosing to express their feelings, choosing not to work so hard and spending their precious time seeing their friends, their family, or working on hobbies and passions that are important to them, choosing to lead a life that was true to themselves and their values. What I'd like you to do is, with the stay in touch with my friends, can you write down just very briefly the name of a friend that means something to you? So a friend that is really important to you, that maybe you don't speak to enough, or you haven't seen that often, that someone that you really hope to stay in touch with for a long time into the future. Just jot down their name. We'll come back to it in a bit. So you can just do it privately. You don't have to put it in the chat. Okay. So gratitude. We will come back. So this, what really matters, we will come back to this at the end of the talk. So gratitude, there is a whole science behind gratitude. Professor Robert Emmons has written a book called Gratitude Works, kind of sharing some of the research and science. And what he's found is that people who practice gratitude regularly, because gratitude is a skill, it's something that we can just practice and get better at, they report feeling happier. They experience fewer negative emotions, generally more optimistic about the future. They actually show they have stronger immune system functioning. They report sleeping better at night, and they typically kind of exercise more. They're more physically active. And there's a practice called the gratitude letter that comes from studies by Martin Seligman. And essentially what it is they get people to think about someone important in their lives and to write them a letter expressing their appreciation, thanks, and gratitude for what that person has done to them personally. And there's a video that I'm just going to share with you now. It was a BBC kind of happiness challenge, and they were trialing these different kind of interventions that the science of well-being showed improved kind of well-being, and one of them was the gratitude letter. So I'm just going to come out and share this clip with you now. Here we go. So we should be able to see and hear this clip.
I think we're ready to start if you'd like to come and see the other room. My name's Mark Williamson. I run an organisation called Action for Happiness, and I think you've probably gathered by now that the topic we're going to be talking about today is happiness.
The Happiness Challenge. We introduced a random group of people to some experts on happiness, and
we're going to be asking them to try out some simple changes in their lives over the next week that we think could leave them feeling happier and more fulfilled. We shall see. Who knows?
Well, one of those tasks was write a letter, a thank you letter, a letter to someone who really matters in your life. Well, everyone did one, but one or two of them, we managed to be there with the camera when they actually took them around and read them out. I'm not going to say a great deal more in this. Just watch for yourselves. This is Tony and Carol.
Probably thinks it's you've been framed or something.
So, come in, Devin.
Tony runs a butcher's shop.
Hello.
And it's all sort of around happiness.
Carol's a medical secretary and belly dancer.
This is my dear friend,
We talked about people that maybe matter in your life. How would you feel if you were asked if you could write a letter to somebody and that person is you?
So, why a letter? It's one method of focusing on what we have. Gratitude, it's claimed, it's good for our well-being.
To my dear friend and neighbour, Pat, this note is to let you know how very happy and grateful I am to have you as a true friend in my life.
Dear Max, yes, a letter to my best friend.
I just knew you and I would be friends.
Oh, say, Carol.
Thank you and your dear husband Mel for all the help, advice, support, encouragement and friendship you've given to me and my family.
I felt that it is so important to be able to tell you what a great inspiration you are, Tony.
But just supporting me. I love you, Pat.
Oh, that's lovely, Carol. Oh, I've never had anybody like you, Pat, like that. That's lovely.
To simply say thank you for the many good things you have helped me with. Oh, Tony. Max, you have been an incredible influence on my life. Whether it has been my business life, or social life, or family life.
I'm just so made up that I came and I have you as my neighbour, and that you, I know, are night or day, whatever time.
I'm always there for you. There's no stop crying.
In life you meet sometimes very sincere, genuine, lovely people, and he is way up at the top.
Well, it is quite emotional. I don't think I've ever written a letter like that, but I'm glad I've done it.
I'm honoured, I really am, Tony. I shall keep that letter. I'm not going to frame it, but I shall keep it somewhere special.
The message, be thankful. A source of happiness? Well, it was here. David Soletto, BBC News, Scarborough.
Okay, so what I would like you to do, based on that video clip, we don't have time to write a gratitude letter, but if you take the name of your friend that you just jotted down a few moments ago, and hopefully you've got a phone nearby, what I'd like you to do, I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes. Can you send that person a text right now, a kind of mini gratitude text? So I'm not going to tell you what to write, but literally just drop them a text now. I'm going to give you 2 minutes until about 3:10, just to connect with them, just to say what you appreciate about them or how much you love having them in your life. It could be about arranging to meet up, because we can still meet up outside of our households, I believe, one other person. But yeah, take a couple of minutes and just drop them a gratitude text, and we will carry back on at 3:10. And if you feel at all awkward about sending someone a gratitude text, then the first time you do gratitude practices, it can feel a bit awkward, but just go with it and just see how it feels afterwards. Just one more minute. Don't get distracted by messages on your phone. Okay, we're going to carry on. If you haven't had a chance to finish your message, that's absolutely fine. Just leave the message half typed and you can come back to it at the end of the session. But make sure that you send your gratitude text. The other thing that I would say is see if you can find some time to write a gratitude letter to someone important in your life, because again, this global pandemic, this situation that came out of nowhere, it really makes you appreciate those special people in your lives who, you know, because it's a life and death situation, we know none of us are going to be around forever. So let's take the time now to express our appreciation of those people and how much they matter to us whilst they can still hear us. So give that gratitude letter practice a go. The other thing, I'm going to show you a short clip again. Let me just share this slide. Oops. The other thing about perspective is that it's about remembering, as teachers, like, why did we become teachers in the first place? Like, what is it that matters to us? Why did we get in the classroom? Why did we choose this career over all the others that we could have done, where we probably would have earned more money and had far more relaxing kind of holidays? And often it's because we got into this profession to help young people, to shape their lives, to give them the skills, knowledge, and attributes they need to lead a kind of happy, successful life for the future. And I think, you know, in terms of our well-being, I think it's really important that we do not lose sight of the fact that our work literally changes lives. It changes people's lives, but we often just don't know it at the time. We don't know it, how much impact we are having on those children. And many of you will have seen the clip where Ian Wright, ex-England and Arsenal footballer, is reunited with a former teacher. And it's very emotional. I'm not going to share that clip. What this is just a short excerpt of when he was on Desert Island Discs, talking about that moment and the impact the teacher had on his life. So I'm just going to play this to you, because I just think it's such a perfect reminder of why we do what we do and the impact that we can potentially have on people's lives.
I know he loved me. You know, I don't know why he chose me. I'm glad that he did. He was the one who taught me about Jimmy Greaves and making sure when you finish, Ian, when you're going through with the goalkeeper, look for the space, score beautiful goals. But he gave me responsibility. I mean, I used to collect the registers from the teachers. Then they made me milk monitor. I really liked that. And, you know, I looked
What was that like for the kid who couldn't sit still?
Well, it was really good. I just felt important. He wouldn't let me play football if he'd heard that I've been naughty in class. He just gave me a sense of feeling like I had some use. You know, it was really weird because the viral video that went around. Where
yes, in 2010, you were reunited with him, and that video clip online's been viewed over 2 million times. You had thought that he had passed away. You'd been told incorrectly.
Couldn't find him. I was doing a television show, and there's a bit in it where I had to go back to the ground and just sit in the director's box. And so I was sitting there in a reflective moment, and then he just came off my right shoulder. And I'd said to him, "Oh my gosh, I thought you died, I thought you was dead." And he said, "Well, I'm very much alive, Ian," something like that. And then he said how proud he is of me. And then I hugged him, and because he was 3 or 4 steps up, I felt like I was like 7 again. I remember him saying, you know, because he was one of the youngest pilots in World War II. And when we won the war, he was one of the pilots chosen to do the flyover of Buckingham Palace, right? So I remember him saying that he was more proud of the fact that I played for England than him flying over Buckingham Palace.
Oh,
I love that man. Gosh, man, I'm so sorry to people who are listening. I'm just turning into this bumbling, crying guy. But
they'll all be crying with you, Ian, don't worry.
When he said that, he changed my life just by recognizing, I don't know what it was when I was standing outside that classroom, that I needed more. And he gave it to me. And, you know, to be able to unveil his plaque at Turnham Junior School was the greatest thing that I've ever done in my life, to be honest. It's the greatest man in the world.
Okay, I think I've listened to that clip probably about 10 times, and every single time without fail I choke up. I can't listen to it without getting emotional. So apologies if any of you are crying right now. But the point is, I just wanted to kind of draw out like the things that matter to children. Okay, we get so obsessed with, you know, Progress 8 scores and SAT scores and all of this stuff. That really doesn't, generally speaking, make a difference or matter to children. So the things that matter to Ian Wright as a young boy from a, you know, traumatic and difficult upbringing, his teacher, he felt like his teacher loved him, felt like he cared about him. He felt important in his teacher's eyes. He felt that he had some use. How sad that before that teacher, he just kind of felt useless as a person. And the things that, you know, his teacher felt proud of him. And Ian said, noticing, his teacher noticed that he needed more and his teacher gave it to him. These are the things that really matter. This is the power that we have to influence and change lives in the classroom. And we should always, always keep that in mind. Like when we're bogged down with, you know, data and all the meaningless stuff, we should always remember that those young people in front of us, we can have a really positive impact on their lives now, but also long into the future. So with that in mind, you know, sometimes we can feel a bit powerless in the education system, but something I always keep coming back to, I love this TomTom advert. It says, you're not stuck in traffic, you are traffic. And it's also, we can't just bemoan the system because we are part of the system. As educators, as teachers, we are part of the education system. We are integral to it. And what that means is if we start to change things, we start to change what we do and how we do it, slowly but surely the education system will shift and change as well. And yes, we need things to change at the top, but we can still make a difference. And I love this tweet by the Dalai Lama from last year. It says, we may sometimes feel that we can't do much as individuals, but humanity is made up of individuals. We can make a difference. As individuals, we can influence our own families. Our families can influence our communities, and our communities can influence our nations. And this is what we do as teachers. We can influence our classrooms, and our classrooms can influence the wider school, and our schools can influence the communities, etc., etc. Like what we do does matter, but part of it, and I know Ross McGill earlier talked about the importance of autonomy in schools for well-being. And autonomy essentially is the culture, the system giving you the space and permission to do what you need to have a fulfilling career. However, what I would say is that even in institutions and systems that don't afford us autonomy, we need to take control of our lives and our professional and our personal lives, which is why small things that we do to change things matters and is important. It gives us a sense of control and agency, which is empowering. It's really, really positive and important for our well-being to feel like we have some sense of control. So something that I often reflect on, which I find really helpful, is to think, if this was my last year in teaching, if this was your last year in teaching, what would you do differently? And the reason I find this a really helpful question to reflect on is, in my first couple of years of teaching, I thought about leaving. I thought, you know, I'm doing stuff that isn't important, it's meaningless, I'm ticking boxes, jumping through hoops, this isn't what I got into teaching for. And I felt really flat and deflated, and I thought, at the end of this year, I'm getting out. And then I thought, okay, well, if this is my last year in teaching, I'm going to stop doing this, I'm going to stop doing that, and I'm going to do this instead. And I started to make changes because I thought, sod it, I'm leaving anyway, I might as well do things that I think are important. And do you know what happened? I started to feel better about teaching because I stopped doing the meaningless stuff, or did as little of it as possible. And I started to do stuff in my classroom that meant stuff to me, and it meant stuff to the children that I was teaching. And surprise, surprise, I got to the end of that year and I thought, actually, I'm enjoying this now. And so I think it's a really important question to reflect on. If this was your last year in teaching, what would you do differently? What would you keep the same because you know it's important, it's working? What would you let go of because you know it's a waste of time, waste of life, and it's not important? What would you have the courage to do differently? So just to end, we've got 4 minutes left, about the importance of laughter for well-being, but particularly laughter in the classroom, because amusement is a positive emotion. When we're laughing, we are in a positive frame of mind. Why is laughter important? It reduces stress and tension, and we're in a particularly stressful and tension, not just kind of industry, but also global environment. So it's really important we find humor. Laughter is contagious. It helps build rapport, stronger relationships with others. We're 30 times more likely to laugh with others than when we're by ourselves. Laughter actually does us good. It strengthens our cardiovascular system and increases the level of natural killer cells in our immune system. Natural killer cells kill cancerous and tumorous cells. And finally, and this is how it links to perspective, finding humor in our situation enhances our sense of perspective and control over the uncontrollable. So I'm just going to end with this clip before I sum up, which is a TV presenter, a Dutch TV presenter who's been set up. He's trying to interview some people that are putting on kind of funny voices, and he's trying not to laugh, but he's failing miserably. And he's got a funny laugh himself. Let's just watch this to end.
Jij had een normaal leven daarvoor en toen plots kom je uit narcose en dan merk je dat het leven niet meer hetzelfde zal zijn. Hoe reageer je daar dan op?
Ja, eerst met heel veel ongeloof.
Ongeloof is eigenlijk het juiste woord.
Excuseer.
Ongeloof is eigenlijk het juiste woord dat Rijke hier hanteert. Dat was bij mij dus ook mijn eerste gewaarwording. Dat ik dacht, dat kan niet. Dat mag.
Excuseer dames en heren. Dus je probeert dan terug je toekomst.
Ik begrijp echt niet wat er hier aan het gebeuren is.
Excuseer. Sorry, echt sorry. Excuseer dames en heren. Dat betekent ook dat je bijvoorbeeld seksualiteit ook een groot probleem bijvoorbeeld wordt.
Ja, mijn vriend heeft het gewoon gedaan gemaakt en ik neem hem daar ook niet aan.
Plus het feit als je met seks omgaat, is het niet alleen het fysieke dat telt, maar ook soms de lieve woordjes. Ja, ik vind dus dat dit echt niet kan hoor. Ik bedoel, nee, moeten we nu nog antwoorden of niet? Want
So, I'm just going to end with a quote that links to laughter and why it's important. It actually comes from a book called, I don't know if you can see it, When Things Fall Apart. It's written by a Buddhist nun. It says, finally, couldn't we just relax and lighten up? When we wake in the morning, we can dedicate our day to learning how to do this. We can cultivate a sense of humor and practice giving ourselves a break. Every time we sit down to meditate, we can think of it as training to lighten up, to have a sense of humor, to relax. As one student said, lower your standards and relax as it is. So just to sum up, being a happier teacher, your well-being is important and it should be prioritized. You need to pay attention to what nourishes you, but also be mindful and withdraw your attention from the stuff that is depleting you. Always keep your eye on the bigger picture. Focus on what really matters. Invest in your close relationships with friends and family and colleagues and students. Remember that what you do really does make a difference, and have the courage to do things differently this year, but also going forwards in the future. And I haven't put it at the end, but remember to have a laugh. Find the humor in what you're doing. Don't forget to laugh. There it is. So I just wanted to end by saying thank you for having me. If you're interested in the new book, it's on Amazon. It came out this week. It's, I think, £8 or thereabouts. But yeah, tweet me at Adrian Bethune. Go to my website if you want to see what else I do, and there's free resources and blogs and stuff. But yeah, looking forward to the last session with Andy Cope, and I hope you've had a brilliant day today.
Thank you so much, Adrian, on everyone here. It has really been a fantastic session, and you've given us lots to think about.
Thank you. I finished on time. Brilliant.